Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the Wavo Pod microphone from JOBY. I'll have video of me unboxing this while I cover the specs, and then I'll shift into the good and any potential downside with this microphone. For my microphone reviews, I use the actual mic for the entire voice work that I do in the video, so this is actually what the Wavo Pod sounds like with no adjustments in post outside of increasing the gain a little bit. With that being said, let's get into the specs. The Wavo Pod is a cardioid or omnidirectional polar pattern with the ability to switch between either using a knob on the front of the microphone. This has a frequency response of 20 Hz to 20 kHz, a signal to noise ratio of 72 decibels, a sample rate of 48 kHz, and a 24-bit depth. This is a USB Type-C connection, and the microphone weighs 1.55 pounds. Inside of the box, you'll find the microphone, stand, USB-C to USB-A cable, USB-C to USB-C cable, and the user manual. Looking at the physical features of the microphone, starting on the front, you have the gain knob, and with this, the light here will be purple when you're adjusting the gain. But if you long press this button, it will turn blue, and that lets you know that you're adjusting the headphone volume. If you do a quick press here, it will mute the microphone, and then this light will turn red. Underneath that, you have the pattern knob, which switches between the cardioid or omnidirectional patterns. Cardioid is going to be best for a single person where you're doing voiceover work, or maybe you're doing any type of thing where you just have the one person, right? Streaming, you're doing meetings, something like that. If you're doing omnidirectional, that's when you have two people. So this would be good for like a podcast, for instance, where you have one person on one side and another person on the opposite side of the microphone. On the bottom of the mic, you have the USB Type-C input and a headphone jack for audio monitoring. The pop filter here is metal with plastic for the molding, and in terms of how you attach that, there's a knob on the back of the microphone. You actually just attach that there, and this will screw in, so it is very, very sturdy. It's held to this with that screw, so it won't easily fall off at all. It's just completely stuck to the microphone until you take this thing off. The stand screws into the base plate, but on the bottom portion of the U here, there's threading, which actually allows you to connect this to a mic arm if you'd like. Now, I'll be doing a full review of the JOBY mic arm, and I won't cover it in great depth here, but I can tell you that it's really good quality, and I'm going to be showcasing this on the mic arm for the large portion of this video because I really do like the mic arm here. But with that being said, you can either directly attach the mic to the mic arm, or you can keep it on the U portion of the base here and then attach that. The upside of doing that is that the stand actually has a 1/4 inch threading on either side, so you could mount other things to this if you'd like, which is really cool. Now, setup here is really easy. You simply plug this in and you are ready to go. So now that I've covered the specs, let's get into what I like here, starting with the audio quality, which is going to be the most important, and I think this sounds really good. To me, it's very similar in terms of the recording quality to a Blue Yeti, which were extremely popular among streamers there for a while, but I don't see them quite as much anymore. It seems like a lot of people have switched over to the Shure SM7B and other XLR microphones, but those are way more expensive than this microphone. So I don't think it's fair to compare this mic to one that is 4 times the price here, including the other things that you would actually need just to get an XLR mic going, because you're going to need phantom power and potentially an audio interface with phantom power. So you have different options there, but that's just more things you have to buy, so the cost starts adding up. Judging this off the price here, I think this sounds solid, and the ease of use is going to be another big draw. You don't need to worry about phantom power, and although you could use this with an audio interface, it's not something that you have to get. Now, up until this point, I haven't adjusted the audio at all in Premiere Pro, but starting with this sentence I'm currently speaking, I'll be adjusting the audio in post using what is available in Premiere to showcase how you can actually clean this audio up and what it'll sound like. The reason for this is they don't have any software. So JOBY doesn't have any software that they have on their website that you can download for their different audio devices that work with PC. And that kind of makes sense because they don't know what you're going to utilize it on. And creating software, that's just got to be a headache when there's a lot of different options that are already out there. Now, typically I run adaptive noise reduction along with essential sounds and just making some adjustments in that, but I upgraded Premiere Pro here and apparently they got rid of that. So I'm just utilizing essential sound and making some adjustments here. So I'm repairing the audio and then adjusting the clarity dynamics here so that it has a more natural tone. And this is something that I actually utilize to increase the quality of my dialogue in all of my videos, even with the Shure SM7B I usually use. My point here being, if you use software to help clean up the audio, you can really take this mic to the next level, and that combo makes this an even sweeter deal. Now, typically I'm just doing audio recordings in Premiere Pro, but on the occasions that I do stream or record audio for games, then I use NVIDIA broadcast software to eliminate any background noise and give my voice a little more depth. With that, you'll need an RTX GPU to use that software, but again, there are plenty of options out there. Or you can use an audio interface to help, and that's something that podcasters usually use with multiple microphones, and you just get to adjust all the different levels. But if you do use this microphone, another cool feature is that it is omnidirectional, so you could just have the one microphone. There wouldn't be a need necessarily to get two if you're utilizing software and audio interface to actually clean up the audio and make it sound really, really good. And having that option is really nice to see here. It used to be more standard with microphones to actually have multiple mic settings here where you had the different polar patterns, but that kind of has gone to the wayside where really just mics have whatever the one focus is of that microphone, right? So they'll just usually have one polar pattern here that's their selling point. But again, it's nice here that you have the two options. You don't see that often anymore. And that's going to make this microphone more versatile for streamers, podcasters, content creators, or musicians. I mean, this could be the right fit for you. And for a lot of people, maybe they don't just do one thing. Maybe they do content creation where they're streaming something and it's just the cardioid that they need for that because they just have the voice in front of this. But then they're switching it up and like, hey, I need to record this podcast now. You have this one thing that covers both of those, and that's great to see. And speaking about the versatility here, that actually brings me to the next thing I really like about this, which is the threading on the side of the stand. So with this, it means you get to add different attachments here. Now, I personally wouldn't necessarily use this all the time, but going back to the podcasting scenario, you could actually put a camera or a light off of both ends here because you have one attachment that can go to one side and one to the other side. And then with that, you now have, again, a camera and a light. So if you're recording something, you get that high quality image that you're wanting. And again, you're recording not just the audio, but the video as well. And you have the good lighting that you'd need. Now that's just for a single person. But if I did omnidirectional here, I could actually do it so that there's a camera facing towards either person. So now as you're recording this podcast, you have that video with it as well. So now you get to repurpose the content. And so it's not just the audio, and you get to splice them. I always love those podcasts where it's one person doing the interview, but as they're talking, you see them. And then when it switches to the other person, it automatically clicks over to their camera, and now you're watching them speak. So this gives you plenty of options to create whatever type of content that you want. Just add these different attachments to the microphone. And to me, it seems like Joby really sought out feedback from the community when making this microphone. And they just asked like, hey, what do you guys want to see with a microphone where you're doing content creation or music, whatever it may be? And with this, they actually have a separate bundle, a podcasting setup bundle. So the things I'm talking about, it's not just like you'd have to figure out how to actually do that. They have those things readily available that you can buy, and it's going to include a camera clip and the gorilla arm here with this. So you could utilize that. And again, you could utilize a light as well. So they've done a really good job with this product and created something personally I haven't seen. I know I've seen other attachments for cameras where you get to add a bunch of different things, but not something for a microphone where you've kind of built those attachments around a mic, which is really nice. Moving on though, I do like the built-in pop filter. It does a decent job here. I have a tendency to lean into the microphone. I don't know what it is. I do this with all the mics. I even do this with the Shure SM7B. I get a ton of pops in there. So if you've heard it in this video, that has a lot more to do with me. as I'm talking, I just literally lean into the mic. I don't know what it is. So that is partly my fault here, but I like the fact that it's built in. So you're not having to add some type of separate attachment. And a cool feature with this, again, going back to the fact that it sounds like they really did listen to the community or wanted feedback from the community, because on the opposite end, now you do have to buy this separate, you can add another pop filter. So if you're doing that omnidirectional, you have one person on either end of the microphone, it's not just going to be one pop filter on one side. That attachment allows you to add a second one on the other side, so you have both people covered. Last thing to cover here is the stand, which is mostly made of plastic, which means you do need to be a little mindful around this so you don't accidentally break it. That's a trade-off, though, that I think that they did, because this microphone is really, really light. Now, the base is heavy with this, so it's not something that would easily necessarily tip over. But to make the whole thing lighter, they went with the plastic for the U portion of the stand. So again, a trade-off. You do make it lighter, but it might break more easily here. That's take it or leave it with that. I do like a lighter mic. You get some that are super duper heavy. They feel like they won't tip, but if you do travel around with it and you're moving, you're doing podcasts, recording music, and you do have to just move with it, it's more cumbersome compared to this, where it is very, very light. And so it's just, again, a trade-off. Easier to travel with, but potentially it may break a little bit easier. Now, with that being said, I'm actually moving on, and typically I'd be covering negatives, but I am happy to report that I don't have any with this microphone, which is great. I don't enjoy coming down on a company's product, so it's always nice when I don't see any glaring issues with a product. Now, I always have some gray area things, though, and this is really a category where it's things you may or may not care about. So just keep that in mind here. The first is going to be the USB-C to USB-C cable, which is only 2 meters compared to the USB-C to USB-A, which is 3 meters. So on my desk, the USB-C to USB-A easily reaches my PC. The USB-C to USB-C, it wasn't quite long enough. I actually ended up buying an adapter. But there's an upside to this. You have 2 different cable lengths, so it depends on how you're using it. I could see the USB-C to USB-C being more for podcasting, where it's like, hey, I need a shorter cable. I don't need something that's incredibly long. So although part of me is like, man, I wish these were the same length, for me personally, I do understand why they would have the 2 different lengths, because it just means that, yeah, if you want one that you don't need it to be as long, so you're not having to wind up cable and make sure cable is out of the way when you're trying to record, that makes more sense. Personally, though, I would have liked them if they were the same length. Now, last thing here is going to be the LED light around the gain knob, which I do like that touch, but it doesn't actually adjust, meaning like if I'm turning down the gain, it's not decreasing or increasing the intensity of the light. So as you turn this, you're either having to listen to playback, or you're having to actually monitor the audio in real time and then make sure that those levels are synced up. So what you're actually monitoring is the same level that you are trying to adjust it in. So these 2 things aren't at different ends of the spectrum in terms of volume, where it doesn't make sense to what you're actually adjusting. With all that being said, it would have just been nice if this was something that would react to these adjustments. And that's not just for the gain, that's for the audio monitoring as well. Again, once you start adjusting or turning this knob, you don't see what you're doing. Audio monitoring is a little bit different because you can hear that, like, oh, it peaked right there versus it goes down. But again, you're not seeing a visual representation of like, oh, these things are at the same level. So now I understand, as I'm monitoring this and I've adjusted the gain, I know that they're at a similar level. Or if I peak the audio monitoring, I know, hey, that's max for the return that I'm listening to. And now as I adjust the gain, I have a better understanding of what I'm actually doing. But once you typically set all this stuff, usually, at least for me, it's kind of like a set it and forget it. If you're needing to adjust this for podcasting in different scenarios, that's where I could see it's just kind of, it's going to take a little bit longer, where if they had the lights being reactive here, it would make that process a little bit quicker. And that's actually it for the gray area. So just the two things there. So that's going to wrap this video up. I think Joby has a great mic on their hands that won't break the bank and has some unique features I just haven't seen with any other mics out there. They have a ton of other products on their website also, so definitely check that out. I'm hoping I can get my hands on their tripod, the wireless lavalier, and the Wave Pro shotgun mic at some point. But for right now, I have a link for this in the description if you want to pick it up. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, like the upcoming review for the Wave Boom Arm, then hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.